Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk, and coming to talk today at 8:35, Larry Kudlow from CNBC, and at 7:35, just at the bottom of this hour, hey, here's a news flash. Washington, D.C. is a corrupt town. Peter Schweitzer comes to talk about it. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
The media are not doing their jobs. That's the major premise of a book that was written by our good friend David Freddoso. David Freddoso works for the Washington Examiner, but he's also a New York Times best-selling author, and his new book is called Spin Masters. He's on the Newsmaker hotline right now. Hello, David. How are you this morning?
Hey, doing great. Good morning.
All right. So how are the media missing the point of what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, I think you look back at the coverage during this last election especially, and you see these incredible cases where there is the journalists are supposed to be ready to sell their souls for a story, but not so much when the story is something that might make Barack Obama look bad or his presidency look like a failure. There are so many examples that I go through, and I try to provide some, hey, here's a news tip for something you could write up that's actually interesting about how the economy is doing much worse than people think. The jobs market hasn't recovered for people in the heart of their careers, ages 25 to 54, that there are fewer of them working today than there were in 1997. The fact that what happened in Benghazi was turned into a story about a Mitt Romney gaffe, and that you have reporters shouting at him, what about your gaffes? And meanwhile, no one's even asked President Obama and made him talk in public about the 16-year-old American boy that they killed in a drone strike, in this drone program that Obama's running.
And how do they accomplish that? It's through the artful use of something called spin and misdirection.
Well, yes, there's spin. There's the way that issues are framed falsely, so that there are the editorial decisions that get made. And then I think, maybe most importantly, there is this liberal bubble world in which all these journalists live. You've got 90% of journalists saying that they vote Democratic. You're liberal. You go to work, and all your coworkers are liberal. There's a certain mutual reinforcement of worldviews. If you ever come across conservative views of any kind, it's some cranky internet commenter who's annoying you and probably doesn't have his facts right. And so you can't see the story. It's like looking outside, trying to look through a mirror as if it were a window. You end up seeing things that reflect yourself. Take a look at how they did not take the challenges to Obamacare seriously in the media, and then that suddenly gave way to panic when reality intervened and was no longer avoidable. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's a substantive case against this law that we love so much by the president that we love so much.
David Freddoso is our guest. His brand new book, Spin Masters, How the Media Ignored the Real News and Helped Reelect Barack Obama. And that last part, I think, really sticks out to me, David Freddoso, helped reelect Barack Obama. When you talk about Spin Masters, usually in the old days we would think that it was politicians and flacks on behalf of a politician who were doing the spinning. But are you suggesting now that basically the media is part of the spin machine themselves?
Well, certainly there's no question that journalists bring their preconceived notion to their work. And look, it's perfectly possible for someone who is liberal or who's conservative to be fair with facts and to make editorial judgments that reflect the genuine importance of things. But when you've got a press corps that is 90% liberal, that, and at the very beginning I go through the surveys that have been done of journalists, that, you're looking at newsrooms where 80 to 90% are voting one particular way. It's just a stunning uniformity for any profession, really. It would be very hard to find anywhere else.
And here's a perfect example. Did you see the interview with the president and Hillary done by Steve Croft? Here's a little sample of this is him talking about how he doesn't ask the gotcha questions.
We have a huge audience. We have a format that suits him. It's long. We can do 12 minutes or 24 minutes. We do a good job of editing. And I've been doing these interviews with him since a few weeks before he declared his candidacy. So I covered him during the campaign and have kept doing it in the White House. But I think it's a question of fairness. We have not... I think he knows that we're not going to play gotcha with him, that we're not going to go out of our way to make him look bad.
That's Steve Kroft talking about why the president always comes to him for the big interviews, and he says, we don't ask the gotcha questions. I don't call them gotcha questions. I just ask them hard-hitting questions that journalists are supposed to ask of elected officials.
Well, yes, and, in fact, you realize that this is something rather specific that he's referring to. After the Candy Crowley moment in that last debate with Mitt Romney, when Obama, the dispute was over, or the debate where the dispute was over whether Obama had actually said something about whether the Benghazi had been an act of terrorism.
Right.
Kroft sat on the footage of Obama basically saying,
yes.
"Oh no, it was," or really avoiding. I suppose it's more accurate to say Obama, when directly asked the question, avoided answering it and did not want to say that it was an act of terrorism. And they even released a different part of the tape, but they didn't release that part, which was fascinating given what had happened, and that, so they could have settled that dispute right away, and instead it was quietly released on the internet a few days before the election.
Yeah, they could have settled the dispute, and David Freddoso made news, which I thought was what we were all in the business of. It actually would have gotten some traffic for them.
Well, except, some people are in the business to protect Barack Obama, I guess.
Well,
and that's what's so depressing about it.
And that's the question. I mean, just in terms of, you're turning this into something that we can change going forward. You talk about that Candy Crowley incident. It really was, I think, a real momentum killer for Mitt Romney, if you think about where he was leading into that second debate. Have we reached the point now where we can re-examine the role of journalists specific in the debates? It is not written in stone anywhere that a journalist has to be the moderator of these debates. Would it be smart for the RNC to move forward right now in reforming the way debates are done and say enough with the journalists, we should use different people to do the questioning?
Well, one of the more interesting ideas that I had heard was panels that were deliberately made up of journalists as hostile as possible, and people who are kind of ideologically well known, perhaps from some of the some of these outlets that are avowedly take a liberal or a conservative point of view, and have them ask questions of the other guy's candidate, which at least that way there's some truth in advertising, and if the journalists overreach, they're the ones who end up looking bad and asking the questions, but at least you can come up with a set of questions that is duly aggressive, and everybody gets put on the spot, which I think is important. This, in Spin Masters, I explicitly say we don't want a situation where Republican candidates get softer treatment, because that wouldn't be good.
You don't
for the
want that.
country. That's not the point.
Right. All right, David.
Well, it's great. It's a great idea for a book, and I hope it does very well for you, David.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, David Freddoso. Once again, the book is called Spin Masters, How the Media Ignored the Real News and Helped Re-elect Barack Obama. Available now. David Freddoso, always good to have you. Don't be a stranger.
Thanks.